preacher man. Ain't no lot to see. All those plans I made for myself, I got nobody else to lean on.
Welcome to everyone joining us to experience stories of resilience, hope, perseverance, and joy.
Move over to a sport chair, basketball wheelchair.
Category of Best Video are...
We love you guys.
You're watching America Trends. I'm Mary Burt-Godwin, and I am so excited to meet our next guest. Her name is Torrie Partridge. She worked in counterintelligence, counterterrorism in the Middle East, and now she owns a design store in DC. She's an artist, a designer. She creates these beautiful maps. The store is called Torrie, and Torrie is zooming in. Torrie, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mary. Such a pleasure to meet you.
It is such a pleasure to meet you. I am fascinated by your story, and we got these in the mail. I just have to show these off. They are so beautiful. Well, first, I asked for Santa Barbara because this is where I went to college, UC Santa Barbara. And then you did one in Los Angeles. We have Manhattan, and we have San Francisco down here. These are so gorgeous, and I can't wait to dive into these. But first, I need to get to know everything about you first. I need to know about your counterterrorism work that you used to do and how you went from that to doing design work. So
yeah,
give it all to me.
First of all, I feel like you dressed to match the Santa Barbara map today. It looks great. The whole scene, really wonderful.
It's an aesthetic here I was going with, yeah.
So after university, I studied Middle East Studies and Political Science and Arabic, and I went straight into doing counterterrorism work and then counterinsurgency work with the U.S. military. I spent a year working in Iraq for a program that helped try to improve cultural competency of soldiers and do kind of research projects over there. And it was really tough. It was a really difficult place to be. And especially, one night our base was getting mortared almost every single night during the summer while I was there. I was over there for about a year.
Wow.
And every night when we would go out, we'd get an alarm. I'd have to run to a bomb shelter. And one night I just was there and thought to myself, this isn't what I want my life to be. You know, I don't want to be jumping from war zone to war zone in this space, working for people who, are tough to be around. And I spent the rest of that night, I couldn't sleep. And all night I just spent writing down ideas for ways that I wanted my life to be other than this.
Wow.
And at the end of the night, I thought, I want to go home. I want to dedicate myself to local community. And I want to go back to doing what I love, which is art and being creative and being an illustrator and doing creative projects and working with people I really enjoy.
Wow, it's so fascinating that you were there and then you had that kind of moment of clarity for yourself and you listened to that intuition. But first, so where did you go to college? And you studied political science, correct?
I did. I went to McGill University in Montreal.
Okay, and then was counterterrorism and that kind of work something that you had thought, this sounds really intriguing, or how did you even get into that in the first place?
I was my junior in high school when 9/11 happened. I spent, my time in college studying Middle East studies. I spent years studying in Cairo. I spent a lot of time in the Middle East. And my perspective was, we were deep in that sort of war on terror time in the United States. And I was like, I would like to take this expertise and go over and try and make a difference with that.
Well,
so
I love that
was very much my ambition.
Because a lot of people maybe have those kind of questions, can I do it? And you did it, and you did it for a significant amount of time. And then you had that moment of clarity where you actually listened to your intuition, and voila, now we have these masterpieces here to talk about. So let's segue into that. So did you also study art, or have you always had this kind of hankering for being creative?
I always tell people this. I have not taken an art class since I was a senior in high school. I basically didn't draw for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years during university and the work that I was doing after university. But all through high school, you could not have gotten me out of the art room. I was the head of our art class. I was painting sets. I was designing everything that you could find. And then for a while, I kind of lost it. And it was a real revelation to me when I thought, and I kind of looked inside myself and I said, you know what, this is core to my being. This is core to my essence. It's core to who I am. Like, if this is so central to what makes me happy, why am I not doing this professionally? Why am I not like putting my all into this and creating, something where I get to actually use these skills and live this type of life?
I don't know if you've ever heard of Julia Cameron, and she wrote a book called The Artist's Way, but she talks about this because I think this happens to a lot of people as they, in high school, were told to explore those things or were encouraged to explore artistic side, theater, whatever it may be. And then as we get older, we think that's not how we're going to make money. And we kind of, maybe we get embarrassed or we feel like it's not a good career path or it's not lucrative enough. And people have a tendency to kind of shut that down. So I think what you did was very normal for people.
That was very much like the attitude that I went in with. I was like, you know what? I love this, but it's not a viable career option. It's not something that I'm going to be able to create a good life doing. And I'm here to tell you and everyone that is not the case. Like,
I love this because
living proof, and I will shout it from the rooftops.
Yes, because so then tell me, so you started, how did you get this idea? I love the name. You just changed the name to Torrie, but your name is Torrie, so Tara, Torrie, spelled like your name, right? But so tell me how the idea for the maps came to be.
Yeah, it's so interesting because when we started what was then Cherry Blossom Creative, that was our old name, we are now Torrie. When I started it as a sort of design agency, my first project was doing mural painting. Like I was in sort of an all-source creative at that point. I would do signage work, I would do logos, I would do websites, I would do marketing materials. And we did a mural for a local hardware store in our neighborhood. And they said, we want something that kind of celebrates the neighborhood. And so I made a really colorful neighborhood map of that particular neighborhood. And the second that it went up on the windows, people were begging me for prints of it.
Wow,
and
that's so
I had
cool.
never even really thought of doing, I'd never really thought of doing products as a thing, as part of my business.
Yeah.
But we made prints and they flew. People were so hungry for something that really represented their neighborhood, their community, the part that they, the area they called home. And then people in the next neighborhood over were like, hey, why isn't there a map of my neighborhood? And then people in the next neighborhood over were saying, hey, could you do one of this neighborhood? And it's slowly spiraled out of control ever since then. So we've done we've done a ton of DC neighborhoods. And then a couple years ago, I started really thinking, I want this to be something where other people in other parts of the country can celebrate their neighborhoods as well. And so we've started doing city neighborhoods like the ones that you showed off at the beginning of the show. We're starting to do more and more cities and show all the different ways and like all the different ways they're made up, all the different neighborhoods that are a part of those cities.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you, I was going to get into the nitty gritty of this just a little bit, the color schemes are so beautiful, how you've, mix the colors together, and then do they represent different, like does the purple represent something and the pinks, or how did you decide what color goes where besides your artistic eye?
So all of the city parks are represented in greens. So, because I'm a big lover of city parks and public spaces. So I wanted to make sure that all the parks were shown off. But everywhere else, I pick a color palette that I think tries to capture kind of the soul of that city. Sometimes there's really very direct representation. So for Philadelphia, I pulled from all of like the beautiful red brick buildings in Philadelphia and some of like the beautiful colors that I see when I'm there and like really use the map for there. For Santa Barbara, which you were showing off, I think of Santa Barbara as just this fun, loud, funky, interesting, bright place. And I really wanted to show off kind of these vibrant colors as part of it. So each one has something to do with kind of like the core essence of the city.
Well, and there's such a great gift idea. I was thinking for the holidays are coming up, and I'm already thinking of, well, I want to keep this one for sure, but I'm already thinking of my friends that Manhattan, one of my best friends lived in Manhattan for a long time, so I think this is perfect for her. So this is a great gift idea. And we have to take a break, but I want to come back and talk about your shop and then all the different ways that you went from what you were doing to becoming your own entrepreneur. So much to ask you about. So will you stick around for another segment?
Let's do it.
Okay, awesome. And everyone at home, stick around for more with Torrie Partridge. And you're watching America Trends. We'll be right back after this break. You're watching America Trends. I'm Mary Burt-Godwin, and we have Torrie Partridge zooming in, owner of Torrie, the amazing design company that does these amazing maps. But also, Torrie, I'd like to hear more from you about your shop because it's a whole store we see behind you, I think, right?
You do, yes.
So tell me about it.
I'm in the Torrie storefront right now. So we, about 5 years ago, had the opportunity to move into a storefront retail space. And obviously I wanted to have the maps here because that's something that's, like my main product, something that I make. But we ended up having so much space that I was like, let's stock this shop with everything that would be a candy store for me. So things that are for creative thinkers, things that are creative tools, really good notebooks, really good pens, really good planners, really things that are for, I always say that we're a candy store for designers and for small business owners, of which I am,
Yes.
both of those things.
And for people like me that I love just everything behind you, the way it looks so pretty. I would walk in there and just want everything off the shelf. It's so beautiful. And I saw that you have some great things with some fun sayings, I believe, little things for the wall, candles. What are the other things you can get there?
No, absolutely. So we have a ton of greeting cards, which is something that was so important to us during the pandemic, with kind of keeping people connected through like the power of the written word and staying, kind of connected in person with people.
Do you guys design the cards yourself?
I have a bunch of cards that we design.
Okay.
And then I work with a lot of independent makers from all over the country, independent illustrators and card makers that we stock here, as well as many local DC companies.
Okay, great. And you keep saying we, so do you have a business partner that you went into partnership with?
Oh, it's sort of a royal we.
Okay.
It's just me. I have a few people who help me out with the shop and also with fulfillment and getting the maps out to people. But when I say we, I mean
you're
Torrie, the concept.
a one-woman show, huh? That's amazing.
I am a one-woman show. Yeah.
That's incredible. And now tell me about what it's like to own a small business. I mean, number one, right now during the pandemic, and number two, in DC where you are, what's the culture like?
The culture of small business ownership in DC is incredible. There's nowhere else in the country that I would rather have a small business. It is so collaborative and so intertwined. It's got this we're a big city, but we've got a very small town feel in the small business community. And I'm lucky to be surrounded by just so many inspiring small business owners, especially female small business owners who just are so supportive and so interesting. And running a small business during the pandemic has been obviously really challenging. We ended up closing our doors in our older location in March of last year and moving everything online. And I spent sort of the first 6 months being really, really worried and really, really nervous. But as I got into it, we tightened our belts, we figured it out, we improved a lot of things with our online store that we probably needed to improve for a long time.
Did you already have an online presence? So was it challenging for you to do that? Or did you already kind of have your website where you were selling items off of?
We already had an online presence, but we ended up moving a lot of our kind of retail store experience into our online presence. We started selling stationary mystery boxes so that people could send kind of a treat to themselves or a treat to one of their friends. We sold kind of little happy birthday kits, things that basically just kind of kept people connected. And I think a lot of people were really missing home during that time and missing other people and missing other cities. So we saw a lot of people sending maps to each other, sending like cards of the maps to each other, personalizing them and sending them with just beautiful notes, like beautiful, beautiful notes in their packages, just about missing home, you know, or missing seeing their friends or missing being in a particular place.
Well, I felt, even though people were tightening up their purse strings, there were things where I wanted to splurge on myself. And I remember I bought myself a really pretty journal because I was spending more time journaling and doing my gratitude lists and doing things like that. So I do think, and then people were caring more for one another and they weren't seeing their friends and family. So giving them gifts like this was probably a really big thing for you to do.
Yeah. And it was a beautiful part to play in everything that was going on, you know, last year and at the beginning of this year. It was a beautiful thing to be in the middle of making those connections between people happen and helping people celebrate their homes and helping people celebrate where they were and helping people stay connected. Like that was a really big honor for me.
Yeah,
honestly.
I bet. I mean, that's one of the silver linings probably that came out of the last few months, or is still coming out of the last few months. You know, I want to go back. What you said about the community there really surprised me. And I don't know if it's because I have this vision of DC being cutthroat and, you know, where it's politics and people are kind of maybe backstabbing, or I don't know what it is, but
everyone thinks DC is House of Cards, and
that's where I get my information is TV. So
no, it's okay. I think a lot of people have that misconception about DC, and I think that when you see DC, you don't see the rest of the city. You know, you see Capitol Hill, you see shows about politics, but we're a big, interesting, beautiful city full of all different kinds of people in all different kinds of industries and all different kinds of walks of life. And I think the rest of the country gets a very, very small sliver of what makes DC, DC. But this is an extremely warm, extremely creative, extremely collaborative town. And of course, we do have the politics side as well. That's definitely there. But in the pie chart of DC, that's like a pretty small percentage.
We've got some support from small businesses helping one another out. I love what you said about female entrepreneurs helping each other as well. And you mentioned that you just recently rebranded. Was that something that came out of COVID? Was that kind of shift in your perspective during that time? Or why did you decide to change the name?
You know, we really changed the focus of our business a few years ago. So when we were starting the company, I spent the first 5 years of the company doing design services work. So working with progressively larger clients, we ended up scaling the company over 15% or over 15 times in the first year. We brought on all these different designers, and Cherry Blossom Creative was a great name for a design agency in DC, which is home of the Cherry Blossoms. And then the more that we started to shift the company over to working on maps, working on location-based goods, we kind of outgrew it. And I also had been in this place where I hadn't been as confident about myself as an artist and as a designer when I first started out, especially because, as I told you, like I had, you know, this wasn't something I'd been trained in. I hadn't gone to design school. And for a little while, I kind of spent some time hiding behind the name and hiding behind the fact that the name, it wasn't my name.
Yeah.
And as I've come into a greater understanding of myself as an artist, as I've come into a greater pride in myself as a creative and as a business owner, I was like, you know what? I want to put a little bit more of myself into our name.
Now it is
what
you.
We're doing.
It is Torrie, Torrie. Well, it's been such a pleasure talking to you, and I'm going to go on your online store and see what I can get for gifts for people. And where can everybody find you? What's your URL?
Yeah, everybody can find us at terratorrie.com. Terra is spelled T-E-R-R or T-E-R-R-A. Torrie, T-O-R-I-E. And it's exactly the same on Instagram and social media, Torrie.
Oh, well, best of luck to you. And thank you so much for sending these to us. I'm so excited to hang this up.
It was so delightful talking with you today.
Yes, I really appreciate you and everyone at home. Stick around. We've got more America Trends with What the Tech. Brad Ramber is coming on to talk cybersecurity and some other interesting topics we've got for Brad. So stick around. We'll be right back right after this.